Okay, and then we learned how to simplify these radicals with I in it, right? So let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so let's do the first problem. We have a square root, right? When the root is even and the radicand is negative, we have to um, realize that this is going to be an, oh, let me change the ink here. Oh, why did it zoom out like that? I don't know why it does that sometimes. Okay, but anyway, so we learned that our I, right? I is equal to the square root of -1. So this radical -49 is equal to the square root of 49 times the radical -1, right? So you can simplify the radical 49, that becomes 7, and your square root of -1 is equal to your I, right? So this is equal to 7I. For number 113, you can't simplify the 13, right? So the only thing you can do is to write this as I square root of 13. Number 114. You have negative in front of the radical, before the radical, so that's going to be there. So the radical -60, you can write it as radical 60 times radical -1. So now we have to simplify 60, right? And if you, oh, sorry about that. Just moving stuff. All right, so we have to find the largest perfect square. So that's the same thing as saying square root of 4 times 15, right? And then this is your I. So your final answer can say -2I radical 15. Okay, did you get those three correct? Okay, if you got those correct, let's move on to 115. Now we learned how to add and subtract complex numbers, right? And we said the standard form for a complex number is a plus bi, right? A is the real part, b is the imaginary part. So first we need to distribute and remove parentheses. So we should get 2 plus 3i plus 3 minus 5i. And then we combine the like terms. The real parts are 2 and 3, so that's 5. And then you have positive 3i minus 5i is minus 2i. And that's your final answer. Let's try 116. So we distribute, we get 7 minus 3i to remove the parentheses, right? And then plus, so you can just remove the parentheses, this is minus 3 minus 2i. Then you can combine like terms. 7 minus 3 is 4. Negative 3i minus 2i is minus 5i. Okay? All right, 117. As we distribute and remove parentheses, we get 5 minus 3i. And for the second group here, this is minus 2 minus 5i. And when you combine the like terms, you get 5 minus 2 is 3. Negative 3i minus 5i is minus 8i. Okay, and don't forget to distribute this negative into both terms, right? So this next one, 118, we get negative 4 plus 2i. And as you distribute this negative into both the right terms, you get plus 1 plus 3i. So let's combine the like terms. The real part, you get negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. 2i plus 3i is 5i. Okay? Any questions with the first bunch of problems here? How did you do? Did you get them all right? Hopefully. If you have questions, you can type in chat or ask. Okay, let's try our multiplication next. Okay, so we have 4i times this quantity, 7 minus 2i. So we have to do distributive property, right? So we first get 28i, and then minus 8i squared. So we talked about I, which is the square root of -1, and we also learned about I squared, which is equal to -1. So that's important because anytime you see an I squared, we need to substitute -1. All right, so as you can see, this is going to become 28i minus 8 times -1, right? And this becomes positive 8. So just remember, you have to write it in a plus bi standard form, right? So the real part comes first. So this is 8, and then this is plus 28i. And that's your answer. Let me actually move this down. Okay, let's try that again. Number 120. So now we're doing distributive property twice, right? Just like we were foiling. Um, so 5 times 3 we get is 15. Oh, let me get my ink out. Okay, so we got 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 4i is 20i. Then negative 2i times 3 is minus 6i. Negative 2i times 4i is minus 8i squared. Okay, so everyone comfortable with that? Next, we have to substitute -1 for I squared, right? So this becomes, this part right here is -8 times -1 is positive 8, right? Plus 8. So we get 15 plus 8, right? So 15 plus 8 is 23. And then 20i minus 6i is plus 14i. Okay, so don't, you can just basically, if you remember I squared, right, is equal to -1. Because you're multiplying by -1, the shortcut is just to change this sign into an opposite sign. So instead of minus 8, you can just say plus 8. Okay, so now for 121, we have our binomial squared, right? And for binomial squared, I'm going to write up here on the top. We had the 2, right? A plus b squared, and then we had our a minus b squared. So the first one, when it's plus, is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And then the minus is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So this is like saying a is 3 minus b is your 4i, right? Why did I write that? I meant to write your b, right? So b is 4i and your a is 3. So a squared, let's write that. A squared is 3 squared minus 4i squared. That's I'm sorry, that's not what I meant to write. That's I skipped the middle part here. Oh, you didn't understand 120? I'll go right back to it. Um, so this is 3 squared minus 2 times 3 times b, right, 4i, and then plus 4i squared. Okay, so that's the shortcut way of doing it. So you get 9 minus 24i plus 16i squared, right? And we said I squared would cause this plus 16 to be minus 16, right? So this is minus 16. So your final answer should say 9 minus 16 is -7 minus your 24i. Okay, so going back to 120, you didn't understand 120? Which part about it? Was it this I over here? I squared? The 23 plus 14i. Okay, so this right here is equal to positive 8. Did you get that? It's this right here. Minus 8i squared. I squared is equal to negative 1. So you're doing negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8, right? So now you're doing 15 plus 8. That's 23. And then 20i minus 6i is 14i. Okay, let's look at 122. So this one is the difference of squares, right? And for the difference of squares, we talked about a squared. Actually, let me write it out first. When we have a plus b times a minus b, that is equal to a squared minus b squared. So as you can see, this is like a minus b, and this is your a plus b. So a is 2, b is 3i. So this, using the formula without having to distribute, this is just 2 squared minus 3i squared, right? So that gives me 4 minus 9i squared. And I squared is equal to negative 1. So this is negative 9 times negative 1 equals positive 9. So 4 plus 9 equals 13 is the final answer. Okay, let's move. Okay, so I think we'll come back to this.